It's been a while since we've done updates on cases we've already covered on this channel, and today we're going to talk about several cases. We're going to talk about the David case because the preliminary hearing in the murder case of the 14-year-old girl, Celeste Rivas, just ended. A very famous case that we covered on this channel and not long ago. We'll also discuss Coriam's case. I don't know if you remember this story we covered a few years ago, which was about a woman who worked on a Disney cruise ship, and now something has come out that's pretty outrageous. But I think it's still pretty important to mention because it's bringing this disappearance back into the spotlight. We're also going to talk about Madeleine McCann, JonBenét Ramsey, and the Menendez brothers. All of these videos have already been made. We'll put links to these cases in the description so you can watch them if you haven't yet. I'll also briefly share each story. Before we get into the more detailed cases we have today, let's talk about the shorter updates on cases we've already covered on the channel. A few years ago, everyone was talking about the Menendez brothers. Do you remember this case? The brothers who were multimillionaires and ended up killing their father and mother. I made a video based on the book written by the investigator in charge of the case where I mentioned that I didn't believe the Menendez brothers. I got a lot of negative comments, but everyone has their own opinion. Supposedly, they had been abused by their father, that's why they decided to kill him. In the video, I say that the real motivation was money. As I said, this led to a lot of people disagreeing with me, which is totally valid. I don't always speak on the channel thinking I'm right, but rather they're my conjectures after analyzing dozens of pages on these cases. From pages of the cases now to being declared guilty and sentenced to spend the rest of I don't speak. In prison, without the possibility of parole, both received 50 years in prison, which under California law makes them eligible. Not because of reason, but conjectures. And in August 2025, they requested a hearing to receive parole, but after seeing that the brothers' behavior in prison was terrible, this is what was reported. And since they did not show remorse for what they had done, this request was denied. The latest information is that they could have a new hearing in 2028, and if everything goes well, the brothers could be released. That's what we know about the update on the Menendez brothers case. Another one of the most viewed cases on my channel, and it's no surprise, is the case of Madeleine McCann. You know that story. I don't think I need to summarize this case. And here I want to say something I've been saying for years. All the media have talked about there being an official suspect, and this has been discussed for years now, a German man named Christian Bruckner. And I've always said it, I've always said that this man was never going to be charged in the Madeleine case. Because it all sounds like they're trying to cover up the reality of what happened to this girl in Portugal. In June of 2025, the investigation in Praia da Luz was reopened, focused entirely on this suspect. And do you know what they found? Absolutely nothing. In fact, Christian Bruckner was in prison at the time he was considered the main suspect in the Madeleine case, but for a different case, an abuse case. And today he is free because he served his sentence. And although, again, I could be wrong, because maybe I'm not right about what I think happened to Madeleine. If you want to know what I think, go watch the original video I made about this case. Anyway, I always thought it was absurd to look for someone to blame with zero evidence. Something tells me it was more of a strategy than something real. Because if they really had evidence like they announced at the time, today Christian wouldn't be free. And another super famous case is that of JonBenét Ramsey, the child beauty queen from Boulder, Colorado. I also think there's no need to talk much about her because I have a video, or actually several videos about this girl's case, and I think we all know this case. There's not much new about this story. The latest update was that in December of 2025, the authorities claimed to have found new evidence. This led to new interrogations and even forensic analyses. But as you know, this kind of information can take years before it becomes public, so we don't know exactly what new things were found or if they have new suspects. Until now, many believe that the brother was the culprit. And this is largely based on a documentary that was made a few years ago, where the focus is put on the brother and the hypothesis that the brother was the killer, probably unintentionally. And this is what we know so far. I also want to say that apparently the police debunked the theory about the brother, but that's what many people believe. And to tell you the truth, it's a pretty realistic hypothesis. Well, let's go to the case of Rebecca Coriam. This is one of the strangest ones. She was 24 years old, British, and worked on the Disney Wonder cruise ship. This story happened in March of 2011 when the cruise ship was leaving the Mexican coast. And it's a case that over the years never had any new updates, and her body was never found. Go watch the video if you want to learn more about this story, because I have a pretty long video about the case of Rebecca. On the morning of March 22 at 5:45 a.m. in the employee lounge, Rebecca was seen on a security camera. Rebecca seemed to be distressed while talking on an internal phone on the ship, which was for employees only. Another detail that caught people's attention was that Rebecca was dressed in men's clothes, which were visibly too big for her. A few hours later, her work shift was supposed to start, but she never showed up. She was supposed to clock in, which was when they started looking for her, but she was nowhere to be found on the ship. The initial investigation was handled by the Bahamian police because the Disney Wonder Company was registered in that country. Over the years, the family and thousands of people criticized this investigation. And many believed that the Disney company didn't want the story to continue so as not to compromise the company. Rebecca's family filed a lawsuit against Disney Cruise Lodge, and we have to say that a monetary settlement was reached, but the amount of money the family received is unknown because this was done privately. There were three important hypotheses. The first was an accident. Rebecca fell into the sea and disappeared. With the case of Amy Bradley, we talked a lot about how a body can disappear if it falls into the open sea. It's not a hypothesis that lacks coherence, but there is no evidence to confirm this. The second hypothesis is about a possible murder. In the video I want you to go watch, the one I made, we talked about a love triangle, about a man and a woman who apparently worked with her. And this could have led to a murder. Also because Rebecca looked distressed in that security camera footage. Also because Rebecca, when she was making the call seen on this security camera footage, was using an internal phone, which only worked to call another phone on the ship. Therefore, she was possibly talking to another employee or maybe a guest. The family stated that Rebecca's credit card was used after her disappearance, and that would indicate that this hypothesis could be realistic. The last one that also makes sense is that Rebecca jumped. Again, we can mention how distressed she was before she disappeared, but let's move on to what's new. To be honest with you, there's no way to verify this behavior. But I feel like it's still important because at least people are talking about her again. A TikTok account called Music Scratches My Brain for Sound. That account no longer exists. It posted a video and a text about Rebecca Correa. First, let's go to this user's profile. The photo is a popular image from the internet, one of those memes used in creepypasta stories. The bio says, "I have a severe case of schizophrenia. I apologize for everything I did." The video is no longer available because the profile was taken down. Apparently, the person deleted the profile. It's from an old recording inside a cruise ship. It also has parts where you can see Disney characters. So, it could be the same cruise ship where Rebecca disappeared. And the quality also looked like it was from around the time this crime happened. There was also some text in this video that the person left which said the following: Disney Cruise 2011. I take full responsibility for the disappearance of Rebecca Coriam. He misspelled Rebecca's last name. They will find her in... And there he left what appeared to be coordinates, supposedly to find the body. These coordinates lead to a road located in the city of Case in South Carolina. The authorities were notified about all of this, and apparently they started to investigate. And this was confirmed by a mystery TikToker who covered this part of the case named Hot Girl History. The video reportedly got over 20,000 likes. It was going viral, and several mystery TikTokers started talking about it, including the girl we just mentioned. Theories started to emerge around this whole topic with this video that was going viral. It's not the first time someone has confessed to a crime on social media, so there was a possibility that it was real. It could also be a bad joke, and maybe the video had been made with artificial intelligence or they had taken it from somewhere else. Now this video. It was up for a few days until the account posted something new before deleting the profile completely. This post said the following: "I didn't do it. The case happened in 2011 and I was born in 2012. A friend and I were joking around. I want to apologize to the family and to everyone else. I've learned my lesson and that's why I'm going to delete this profile. I truly apologize." Now, this is the last thing we knew. There was a possibility that it could have been a bad joke. And even though I don't agree with this kind of content, because we're talking about real victims and real families, at least we can say that the case went viral again, and this makes more people want to find this story. This is always good, because new updates can happen about the case after it goes viral. The same thing happens, for example, when Netflix releases a documentary. Well, let's get to the case we covered recently. This video is also on my channel if you want to watch it, but basically, it's the story of the murder of Celeste Rivas, a 14-year-old teenager whose dismembered body was found in singer David's Tesla. Up to the moment of recording this video, the preliminary hearing has already ended, but the trial hasn't started yet. I think that by the time this video comes out, because you know I record a few weeks in advance, then the videos come out, the ones we recorded with the team. I think that by the time this video is already published on the channel, the trial should have already started. Yeah, so probably. We're going to do another update on this case with all the official information from the trial as well. Everything that came out in this preliminary hearing is super interesting, including things that weren't known before. What everyone is reporting is that the evidence that were being shown are devastating. Celeste Rivas's family was present at this preliminary hearing. They were in the front row and had to see the images, very graphic, of their dismembered daughter. They say the photos, which obviously weren't made public, are extremely graphic and hard to look at. The family's lawyer advised Celeste's parents not to look at the photos, but even so, they did it because they wanted to show strength at that moment, but later they were seen crying in the hallway outside the courtroom, which isn't surprising. To see something like that, it's traumatic. It can traumatize anyone, and even more so the parents of a victim. Among the photos that were shown, there were photos of the severed limbs, there was the head, there was the torso, and also the finger that had the tattoo with the word SHSHH. I don't know if you remember that it had the word SHH written on it. On the screen you can see the illustrations that were made in this hearing. There, David is described as calm, almost emotionless, wearing the orange clothing worn by incarcerated people in the United States, in addition to some black eyeglasses. The homicide detective from the city of Los Angeles also testified and stated that in the photos, worms could be seen, and flies around and inside Celeste's body. The cause of death was another topic that hadn't come to light at the time. There were many theories, for example, that it could have been an overdose. But it's already been confirmed that Celeste died as a result of multiple stab wounds all over her body. As far as we know, the amount of evidence is overwhelming. We're talking about lab reports, police reports, photographs, videos, and forensic evidence. David was charged with first-degree murder under special circumstances. This special circumstances thing is because of David. He has a power imbalance with the victim. She was a minor, and it's also claimed that there was an attempt to generate more income after Celeste's death. And we also have to consider, take into account, I should say, that David was famous and Celeste was his fan. Despite all this, David Burke pleaded not guilty to all charges. That's something that stands out. But let's talk about two more parts regarding this case. We're just now learning these details. And I'm telling you, in the trial that's coming up soon, or it may have already started, if you're watching this while the trial is underway, much more will be revealed. First, let's talk about the music that David never released publicly, but that was presented at this preliminary hearing. And why is this important? Because it talks directly about the crime. This was reported by an American YouTuber named Sloan, whom I recommend you check out on TikTok, where he's uploading a lot of content about the preliminary hearing. And he was one of the few journalists to have access to the preliminary hearing. One of these songs is called Trapped in a Tesla, which was exactly how Celeste was found after her murder. Another one of the songs, her name is Celeste. And the lyrics of this song, they also say a lot. At one point it mentions, I hear her voice every time I breathe, I'm obsessed. This YouTuber Sloan, the one who's reporting on all of this, posted these songs on his TikTok account in case you want to go check them out. Among other content that David Burke, the singer, released on his official X account, formerly Twitter. On April 30th, 2025, he posted the word decomposition. And it also drew quite a bit of attention that he released a hoodie as part of his merch which had a red stain design to look like blood. At the preliminary hearing, they also showed an animated video that David released at some point where he is seen dismembering a body, and it seemed that the death of Celeste, it inspired much of his art, or that he was simply confessing through his art. And here I want to talk about a crazy theory, but it might make sense. Although we still can't declare this singer guilty until the official trial happens, we can speculate that he will be found guilty because of the amount of evidence against him. Now, I feel that declaring himself innocent with everything that is already known, it's because David wants notoriety. And this is just my speculation. I know it sounds really crazy, but hear me out. And then I want you to give me your opinion. If David is found guilty, he would get the maximum sentence, which in California could be the death penalty. As a well-known singer, reaching the point of being convicted could be part of a strategy to make one last attempt, to go down in history forever. What other artist accomplished that, even if it's grim? And I'm not defending him at all. This isn't a defense. It's just trying to understand the madness this man carries inside. It's not the first time that someone has committed a heinous crime just to be famous or to always be remembered. There's a term, and this is something I found out after doing all the research about David's case, but there's a term that's often used when talking about this type of person. It's called the Herostratus syndrome, which is when someone does something really crazy or destructive to gain notoriety and make their name immortal. This term, it comes from Herostratus, who burned the temple of Artemis in Ephesus in the year 356 BC, which was one of the 7 wonders of the world, because his motivation was to be remembered forever. He was tortured, he confessed. Then the authorities tried to block. They decided not to mention his name so as not to give him what he wanted to achieve, to be famous. But this was in vain, because the case was too big not to talk about it. And I came to this conclusion. Obviously, this is just an assumption, without confirming anything, because it doesn't make sense to declare oneself innocent with the amount of evidence that points to it. He is guilty. If he had accepted his guilt, he would have been given a lesser sentence, probably, and there was going to be a trial. That means all the details of the crime would not be known, something that tells me that's what David Burke wants. And it's sad, because something that David, if this theory is real, he sees it as a last attempt at a kind of dark artistic work, so that his name would be immortal in the history of humanity. It even makes it dangerous, because it would show, just like in the case of Herostratus, that he would achieve it. And that's the double-edged sword of social media. People will talk about David and Celeste for years and years, and documentaries will come out, and movies and series. Songs will be made. In a few years, David will have fans again, like what happens with serial killers. Books will come out, and his name will really be immortalized, unfortunately. That's what I think. That's what David wants, even if he had to be executed. It's crazy. If you start analyzing this theory, I want to know what you all think about this too. I want to close this part by talking about David's possible defense, which is also super interesting, because something that surprised everyone at this preliminary hearing was that they showed the last messages that were exchanged between Celeste and David, one day before the murder. Celeste apparently was very jealous of a female friend of David's. Her name was Asia. According to the report that was released about this, Celeste sent the following message to David. "Why do you want to be friends with Asia?" David replied, "She is a friend." Then Celeste said to him, "You keep seeing her. There's no need for her to be your friend." All of this, apparently, like I said, it was a day before the murder. Celeste then wrote to him, "Do you really choose her over me? It's disgusting and really crazy. I've known you for years, and you've only known Asia for a year. I don't want to be your friend anymore if you're going to be friends with her." After more exchanges, Celeste asked him why Asia had been at his house, to which David replied that she had gone with several other friends to pick up the passes for Coachella. And then came the message that many believe is the one David's defense will use to get a lesser sentence. Celeste said to him, "Damn it. I swear to God I'll kill you. I'll strangle you. I'll tell my father so many lies about you and I'll ruin your career." Although it's complicated to justify the crime using the self-defense claim, and I'm talking about David's side. And his lawyers are going to try to do that. Many people believe that they are going to portray Celeste as a jealous lunatic who threatened David and even admitted that she was going to lie to ruin his career. Now, one thing is to defend yourself from an attack. The first thing you have to do in that situation is call the police so they can verify that there was an attack or an attempt. But dismembering a body and leaving it to rot in a Tesla, I feel like that can't be considered self-defense. What could happen? It's self-defense, and instead of being convicted of first-degree murder, they give him a lesser sentence for other charges. And if this were the case, he could spend quite a few years in prison, but eventually get out for good behavior. I hope that in this trial they take into account that Celeste was a minor, she was 14 years old, she was a child, that she still didn't have enough maturity to handle a relationship, much less with an adult. Her messages are those of a child, a distressed teenager, and even though it was confirmed that Celeste threatened him, it has to be proven whether she had a weapon, because saying it was self-defense, without proving details like those, it's pretty ridiculous. Let's suppose that the defense has the evidence to prove that it was in self-defense. That could save him from the major sentence, but he would still have to face charges. Other charges like tampering with a corpse, hiding evidence, lying under oath, etc., which by themselves are fewer years than the major sentence. The last thing I want to say is something strange that happened recently on July 25, 2026. It was posted on David's streaming account. I mean, where all his music is, on Spotify, Apple Music, etc. A new song called I Did It. I did it! As if it were a game. This release of this song, it was accompanied by a photo. This photo was the photo that was taken when David's Tesla was being towed after the body was found. Celeste. No one knows who posted this, because David is in prison without internet access, or at least that's what we assume. It could have been his team, which makes the most sense, or it could have been a scheduled post. But I imagine that when it goes to trial, at the trial we'll learn all the details, including this part. This case itself keeps getting stranger and crazier. Like never before. I want to read your comments down below. because I want to know your theory, or rather, your theories. I feel like this is motivated by fame. I get the feeling that David, in his madness and his desire to go down in history as a famous singer and murderer, did what he did. And it's even sad. I'll tell you why. This thing about releasing the music, if it's confirmed. I saw this from this YouTuber named Sloan. He's the one who was at the preliminary hearing, so he's giving information pretty realistic. But if this were real, I don't know. It seems pathetic to me. It even seems, if we're talking about David's team doing this, when there's a 14-year-old girl involved who was murdered. It seems to me like a slap in the face. The last thing I want to say about this case is that there are a lot of people who keep blaming Celeste's parents because they didn't take good care of her, as a form of negligence, which I think also makes sense. I mean, letting her go with this man. I think it's something that needs to be investigated as well, and I think that during the trial we're going to learn more information about that too, so that's it. I want to know your theories, and that way we'll meet again in the next story.